Welcome to the Embracing Race podcast. All episodes were recorded in advance, so don't be alarmed if the timeline seems a little bit cattywampus.
Welcome to another episode of Embracing Race, Conversations with Truth and Intention. My name is Shawnee. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I got my co-pilot here.
I am Jessie Littlejohn. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm just along for the ride.
Just along for the ride.
Yeah.
Well, who's driving? Because I don't like driving long distance.
Jesus took the wheel a long time ago.
Thank you.
Carrie Underwood said so.
Yes, Carrie. Look what I got. Hey, y'all. Okay, so I know this is an audio. This is a podcast. I got to get used to that. But we do have video content. Our videos drop on YouTube every Thursday. You should follow us and subscribe. And you should subscribe to the podcast. But I've got my birthday sweatshirt that Jessie got me for my birthday last year.
It says, know your worth, then add tax.
And add tax. Yeah, so we were going to talk about, okay, so this conversation is about like when are you being too woke, right? And so I saw this tweet the other day and I sent it to Jessie.
From the Transcultural Mindfulness Alliance, which is a mouthful in and of itself.
Right? It's a long title. And so I followed them and a tweet came up saying that Aretha Franklin's Natural Woman should be banned from all streaming platforms because you got the quote up?
Yeah, it says Aretha Franklin's 1968 song Natural Woman perpetuates multiple harmful anti-trans stereotypes. There is no such thing as a, quote, natural woman. This song has helped inspire acts of harm against transgender women. TCMA is requesting that it is removed from both Spotify and Apple Music.
So I wanted to talk about like what happens, like I wanted this to be like a broader conversation of like what happens when what we know and what we have grown into and what we like all of a sudden becomes harmful for other people in the community, right? So when I first read that, initially, my first reaction was, oh my God, this song that I love that has I have a personal memory of this song is harmful. And so then my second thought was trying to make it relational in a sense of who do I know from that community that I could be harming, right? So I sent it to you, right?
Right.
Okay. So, and I'm because before, I'm like, we got to have a conversation because this was the song. Okay. So I am a product of the 80s and 90s, was born in the 70s. Murphy Brown was a sitcom that I loved and watched as a kid, right? And it was, back then, it was ahead of its time. It used to get in trouble. I don't want to say in trouble, but it used to get a lot of they had a lot of controversial topics.
It pushed boundaries, yeah.
Right? It pushed boundaries. And the main character and the title character, Murphy Brown, played by Candice Bergman, decides to become a single mother. When her son is born, the last 30 seconds of the show, I remember it like it was yesterday. She holds her child, the character holds her child skin to skin and sings Natural Woman to this. And like tears are flowing and everything, right? And I shared with Jessie last week that, I did the same thing when my son was born because I never felt maternal. Even while I was carrying my son, I didn't think I was going to make a good mother. I didn't think I wasn't the kid like I grew up in small town America where your first job, if you're a girl, is babysitting. I was playing basketball. was babysitting what? I was the only child. So watching your younger siblings and watching other people's kids was not something that I did. And so to then, years later, become a mom for the first time, and a relatively young mom, I was under 25. I felt an instant connection to my son hours after he was born, and he was born early. And so it was really important for me too, because he was going to be in the NICU for a minute, to connect. And I sang that song and tears were flowing then. And I got very emotional. And I'm like, now if that is harming, like I look at it now, like if that was like, if you felt harm for that, then I want to have a conversation on why that would be harming to you as in your humanity, right? Because that's the last thing I want to do. And share with the people what you said, Jessie.
What I said was, I think it's this concept of what is natural.
Yes.
Because there's so much ambiguity around what is natural, because what I hate, and this is relevant since we're expecting, and because it's such a taboo topic, I think, amongst birthing people, is what when people call vaginal birth natural childbirth versus having a cesarean section. And I mean, it's one of those things where if I'm looking at how a person gives birth, whether a child comes from somebody's vagina or is cut out of them, like, who gives a shit? Like, I don't care. Like, the baby is coming out of you. That in and of itself doesn't feel natural. Like, you are growing a thing inside of your body. That doesn't feel natural. But yet that is how God intended for our bodies to be. And God inspired the science to be able to do a cesarean section in the event that you couldn't perform a vaginal birth. Like, I don't understand. And I also want to know, like, why people are doing so, like, I feel like people are doing too much.
I also thought that what I also thought was profound in your reply to me was the fact that you were like, but let's look at the people who wrote the song, right?
Yes.
Right? And I think that is so important, right? Like, because I never even looked at it from that perspective either. The person who sang the song was an ally. An ally. And the person who wrote the song was an ally. So what are we really saying here?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And then, like, the iterations of it, like Celine Dion has done a really powerful iteration of Natural Woman. And then Kelly Clarkson has done one. I mean, countless women have done iterations of this song. And I can't think of any of them that have been anti-LGBT. And if anything, I feel like this song would actually be empowering to trans women to say, you make me feel like a woman, or I feel like a woman.
Right. Like, I was thinking that as well. I was totally thinking that as well.
Does it say that I have a uterus or a vagina or breasts or like anything? It just says you make me feel good inside.
Yes.
So if you ask me, that's the epitome of what it is to be transgender, is, on your insides, in your mind, in your heart, in your body, in your soul, that this is who I am. And I'm going to sing about it. Damn it. Like, that's what it's about.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that a lot of times. So I did see that. So this post, it didn't really, I wouldn't say that it went viral, but it went viral enough. And then they were like, and then they kind of went back and retracted and said, oh, it was all satire. And I'm like, was it just to get, like, I'd be interested to figure out, like, how many people were following them before and then, like, now after. And that is problematic in itself too, because you start this, like, when you use the words harm, that is a buzzword now, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And harm is, and I want to be very clear, just, knowing that especially Black trans women are harmed at a higher rate than any other demographic. And I think that it's important when we use words like harm, that we are real, that it should not be used in a satire way. Because that, for me, my antenna is up, and I'm like, why are we causing harm? What do we need to do? How do we stop the harm? I'm all about prevention. Yeah. Not about, I don't like clickbait stuff.
No,
I don't. All right, so moving on. If it's satire, it's satire, but we can still listen to Natural Woman without. But
what is satire or not? It still sets the precedent of what we wanted to talk about, which is how, like, when are you doing too much?
When are you doing too much?
What is over allyship? What is too woke for woke? I guess.
Right. Or when are you being too racist? Like down in Florida. Let's talk about that.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. Hear me when I tell y'all. Yeah. Well, I don't know when we're going to air this, sometime in February, but I just want to let y'all know that I am not, I don't have a crystal ball. But I'm about to prophesy and tell y'all that Ron DeSantis is going to run for president. And let's be clear, it's not going to be, everybody's like, oh, it's going to be okay because him and Trump are going to just split the votes. He's going to win the Republican nomination. And then if people who do disagree with everything he believes in, if we do not galvanize and strategize starting now, he will become, how many presidents are we in? This was going to be really good if the 49th president.
47. It'll be 47.
Are you sure?
Yeah, because Trump was 45, Biden's 46.
He was 45. Yes, because when I turned 45, I was mad. Turned 45 in the middle of the pandemic, and I was mad because I couldn't even say like it was a good year.
Right. He's ruined the 45.
I couldn't even, like, when I was 44, I was like, oh, it's my Obama year. I could say that, right? Can't even say that. Like, and I probably wouldn't say it's my Biden year. I don't think I would say that.
No, I don't. That doesn't. No, probably not.
Hey, here's the thing. Like, I feel like this would be a great way to show how to use your power, right? To give up your power and say, you know what? My dream was to become president. I did that, but I'm about to be 82 years old. Why would you want to be president at 82? Why would anybody want to do that?
Especially with how wear and tear it is on your body.
It is so, like, it's not. It's dumb. I know when I'm 80, I hope I'm like, Lord, I mean, whatever God's will is, but I hope I'm still not teaching white people how not to be racist. I hope we can just be like, look, remember what Shawnee said 40 years ago and do that. It's timeless. But I don't want to be out there. I want to be just sitting there living my best life, looking at blue water.
Yeah.
And you want to know what I want to do when I'm 82? I want to have like a retreat center, and people can just, those that are younger and in the fight and need to come rest and need relaxation, come to my compound. I want to walk like Oprah. Oprah be taking walks and stuff.
True.
She got a walking cane.
Although Gail's struggling.
Yeah. and then she gets to the mountaintop and they be having tequila shots. I want to do that at 82.
That's the life you want?
He's sitting there trying to break down microaggressions and telling people, you know, that was harm. Let the youngins do it. So I say that to say, the Democratic Party needs to be like, they need to galvanize, they need to have a secret meeting, and they got to be like, look, we're gonna emerge this new young under 50. Can we vote for someone under 50?
Mm-hmm. Heck, I would take somebody late 30s, early 40s. Well, President Obama was in his early 40s. What? Oh, President Obama and President Kennedy. They were our youngest presidents, weren't they? Like
Yes.
early 40s.
Yes.
I think
But oh my gosh, I think 6 months into office, President Obama went great.
Mm-hmm.
He had a whole grant, all the way
Right.
grant. Be like, yeah, this sounds good on paper.
I think the only president that didn't age publicly was President Trump, and that's because, well, we won't talk about that. That'd be not a good Christian-like of me.
This banning of AP Black Studies and African American history is just, it is like D.L. Hughley tweeted out the best tweet ever that I've seen. So he's like, okay, so basically what you're telling me is slaves, you took away education from slaves, and now you don't want us to learn about that you took education away from slaves. I was like, okay, I got it. Like, what are we saying? It said it had no educational value. That's what he said.
I don't understand. What I don't understand, and correct me, I mean, you can't speak for everyone, Shawnee. I don't get it. But like, what I don't understand is people like Ron DeSantis or President Trump or whoever the white man may be, that says things like this and who basically devalues an entire population. I don't understand why that population still supports people like them. So like, why do I speak for like gay people as well and queer people, like why do you support a person who is so against who you are and like says that you have no relevance whatsoever to history or to life in general, but I'm still going to cast my vote for you? Like, why? I don't understand why you would vote for somebody or support somebody publicly who doesn't give two shits whether or not you breathe. Like,
people vote for their own self-interest all the time.
That's true.
And the only thing I can think of is it because it to uphold white supremacy. So I misquoted D.L. Hughley, so I want to correct that. What he said was, let me get this straight. It was illegal for slaves to learn, and now it's illegal to learn about slaves.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's in a nutshell, that's basically what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's educational racism and all. And I don't know. It's scary. It's scary.
Kind of what else is gonna be deemed irrelevant? Like, obviously, like anything that shows white people in a bad light, then we might as well just like close our history books altogether.
It's always, look, history is history. And I remember my 8th grade history teacher always asking us, what side of history do you want to be on?
Mm-hmm.
When we were learning about ethics and civil, like, what was the class called? I can't remember. But yeah, mainly ethics. What side of history do you want to be on? I mean, that's a question I asked myself in the summer of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I share this story all the time, but my older two were going out to protest, and my then 10-year-old was like, what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that there's a better way. Like, we all have stories, and we all have probably not so great stories in our family history, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't know my father, but I heard he robbed banks.
Okay.
You know,
Not the best sister. Yeah.
right? Out there being dead presidents. You know, I mean, like, movie reference. So, but that's not my story. So you can rewrite history. You can stop. Learn, like, you don't have to do what your ancestors did. Good, you know, the bad part of ancestry, you don't have to do that. You're really good at remembering things. So I'm gonna put you on the spot. So I know, right? Christine Hung. Do you remember when she did the keynote
at Next? Yeah.
And she was talking about talking back to the ancestors, right? Are you going to lift your ancestors up, or are you going to talk back to the ancestors? And sometimes you're going to have to talk back to the ancestors. Those are the ones that you don't want to, you know, that aren't on the right side of history.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
I think it's when those, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out how I want to say this, but like, I think it's often those ancestors that you don't want to be like, that are so often lifted up and weaponized against you. Like, I don't know. It's hard. I don't know if that's what I wanted to say. Yeah, it's hard. No, but at the same time, like, what is the quote? Those who don't learn their history are doomed to repeat it. So, like,
you don't want to do that.
Yeah. What I want to know is, speaking of harm, what is the harm of learning about our history?
Right, because I don't see people like, oh my gosh, that was so bad, I'm going to turn out like them. No one ever says that.
No. And I remember like growing up, learning about slavery. Yes, it's obviously this very whitewashed version of it. But growing up, I knew slavery was bad. Like, I recognized the complacency and the culpability of white people in the acts of slavery. But never once did I sit there going, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible person because I'm white.
Right.
What I recognized was, wow, we have a terrible, terrible history of hurting and harming Black people and people of color. And I hope that doesn't continue. Even as a young person, I still knew that slavery was not my fault, but I wasn't made to feel guilty about my whiteness.
Right.
And I don't understand why adults don't think that kids are going to be able
to
separate that or process that in their mind, because we've been doing it forever. Even with the watered down version of it, we've always been doing it. Like, we're not stupid. We can.
I've never, like, I honestly, and I'm not trying to be funny or facetious here, I grew up around white people. I was the only white kid in my class when we were learning this white-watered version of American history. And not one of my classmates ever came up to me to apologize for slavery, right?
Yeah.
And I never made them feel like they needed to.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the 80s.
Yeah.
Like,
what would you have done growing up? What would you have done if one of your classmates, 8, 9, 10 years old, however old you were, because we learned about it all through schooling, what would you have done if one of, like, your 8-year-old friend came up to you and was like, I'm sorry, Shani, about slavery? Like, what would you have done?
I would have been like, okay, you want to go play? like literally. That's what, right?
What would teenage Shani have said? During your Civil War class, what would teenage Shani
I don't know. So teenage Shani was a little bit more like, didn't care, and everything was a joke, right?
I would have been like, how about those reparations?
Right. Yeah, I probably would have said something. Or I would have been like, okay, well, if you're so sorry, buy me lunch or something. I probably
Exactly.
would have said something like that. Right. But we never, but like, that's the thing. Like I've been trying to figure that out too. Like, who are these kids that are so upset
Yeah.
that they're going, like, if you're that upset, do something about it. What can you do now? That's the part. See, that's the part. You know, this agenda is upset that the children learning this now are saying this was wrong, because they're challenging, because I've heard people that are in academia at the college level that are like, this is wrong. We got to do something about this now. Like, it's like they're like, activism is like almost ingrained in their minds, because they know that this system, that it is a messed up system, and they're trying to make it equitable. These are 17, 18, 19-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
And we got to remember that that these group of kids are growing up in a society that has school shootings, and they're tired of losing their friends, and they're tired. And when they go back into their history and see that this is not new, they're like, what the fuck? And they're mad.
Yeah.
They're not mad about being white. They're mad about white people before them not doing shit about it. And that's what so that's what the Ron DeSantis's and the Abbotts and all of the people that are trying to suppress history and try to make things not, and try to change the narrative. They're mad that they have to answer to their children and their nephews and their nieces.
Yep.
They're holding them accountable in their own homes, as they should, but they don't have a response, because power, I don't know, I keep quoting George Bush, but I liked when he said this. You know, y'all know I love the Today Show. So he was promoting his book of portraits, right?
Yeah.
And this was like right around the time where, you know, Trump was in office and he shut down the press corps, right? Which, you know, it was a big deal because, you know, free press has been part of our democracy forever.
In the fabric of our nation, absolutely.
Right. You know, and so I'll never forget when Savannah asked him, what do you think about this administration shutting down the press corps? And he says, power is a hell of a drug. I've been quoting him ever since. You know, like, I mean, you know, I don't have anything against the Bushes. I, in fact, liked the Bushes somewhat over, you know, I loved Daddy Bush and Barbara Bush and their love story. I loved it. I loved the love letters. Loved it. I'm a sucker for love.
Yeah.
But you know, times it's hard when I'm quoting George Bush. But power is a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
And people in power don't want to give power up.
No. Because that would dismantle the system. Well, I mean, and I think that goes back to what you're saying. Like, if we can control what we're teaching, if we can control how kids are being educated, especially this generation who gives, as problematic as it can be at times, who gives two shits about what they say or how they say it, or, you know, standing up to power, because they do a lot.
Yep.
It's Gen Z, Gen Alpha generation doesn't care. But anyway, if you are trying to control how you educate these generations, excuse me, and you ban teaching them the full and total truth, then yes, you're exercising power over them so that they can't talk back to you, so that you don't have to answer to them, and so that they don't go to the polls and vote you out.
Yes.
To advocate for themselves. I mean, it has nothing to, I think at the end of the day, yes, they're trying to whitewash the history. But I think it comes down to what you said. They are trying to hold power, and by holding power, they are holding on to how they educate children. And these kids aren't going to take it.
No,
they're gonna do what we've done for generations, which is to find secret ways to learn. They're gonna teach themselves to read. They're gonna teach themselves how to do X, Y, or Z. They're gonna go and take secret classes. I remember, and I'm hoping that I'm not misquoting this, but we have a mutual friend, Leanne Hodges. Her mom taught a science class, and in Kentucky. And she was I believe she was a biology teacher. She taught biology at one point. And the school in Kentucky did not want to teach about HIV. Obviously, it was, Kentucky. So it is what it is. But they didn't want to teach about HIV because they thought it was related to AIDS. And they thought it was related to gay people. Obviously, HIV is related to AIDS. But they didn't want to teach about it because they thought it was related to gay people. And you were going to indoctrinate people about homosexuality, blah, 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 blah. So Leanne's mom, who is a wonderful woman, said, screw that. I'm going to hold class in my living room, and anybody who wants to come can come learn about HIV and AIDS and science and like what it actually is, and taught this like almost, I think it was like an AP biology class, basically, off the cuff. It didn't count towards anything.
wow.
But she had a full living room of students that are like, yeah, screw that. I want to know the truth. And so she created this whole curriculum in her living room and taught these kids. And that's what we've been doing for generations. If
Yes.
you want to teach me in the classroom, fine. I'm going to go learn about it somewhere else.
It reminds me of the teacher. I really want to interview her, right? Because it reminds me of the teacher that taught Ruby Bridges that first year she went to she integrated school. One teacher. None of the other teachers would teach that little girl. And all the parents pulled their kids out of her classroom, and she showed up to work every day and taught Ruby Bridges. And Ruby Bridges went on to say that she was the most nicest teacher she ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know, those are the people that, and, a lot of people will sit there and say, well, we don't want to lift. I want to talk to white people like that, because white people like that will help other white people that's on the fence of doing something, right?
Yeah.
But I want to talk to her she's still living.
Mm-hmm.
What made her and she was married and everything. So she had to I'm just thinking back then she had to have the support of her husband, because back then you couldn't do nothing without the support of your husband. Right. And she sacrificed her job. I'm pretty sure it would have been because they use tactics you can't work, if you do this, you're going to lose your job.
Yeah.
Right. And she taught her for a whole year.
Mm-hmm.
But people were throwing stuff out the window because you knew it was right. You knew it was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You were convicted enough to say, I feel like there, one of the things that I tell people all the time, particularly white people, is that your privilege has power in and of itself. Don't give away, use your privilege for good.
Mm-hmm.
Use it for good. I'm not telling you to denounce your whiteness. No. Why would you do that? Because I'm not. Look at my afro. I love being Black. Hear what Ron DeSantis says. Hear what anybody. Black is beautiful. I want you to be confident in your skin too. And I want you to then But what I need for you to do is to make sure that I'm not harmed because I love being Black.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was it that you said last night? Black Lives Matter because Jesus needs them to?
Because the Lord needs it. Yeah.
The Lord needs it. That's right.
Yeah.
Black is beautiful because the Lord needs it.
You say things that are like, just like in a bubble, because we're like in this bubble, right?
Oh, that's true.
Like, people are going to listen. Like, I want people like all the way in Minnesota to listen to this, and they're going to be like, last night, where were they last night? Is there another episode?
We were at a Presbyterian meeting.
So we are Presbyterians, people. I don't know if you know what that means, but let's be clear. We are PTUSA Presbyterians.
Yeah. We're the progressive Presbyterians. We're allowed to say shit and fucking damn.
Did I ever tell you, like, my whole Lenten Epiphany story?
About being Presbyterian?
Well,
or
no.
Just in fear?
Not really about being Presbyterian, but how I started writing books and stuff. Like, I guess, like the start of my quote unquote ministry.
Wasn't it during a Lenten Bible study?
Yes, but the funny thing about it is the book I had been like promoting this book up until like last year.
Okay.
So for like the past like almost 10 years, I was like, yeah, we read this book during Lent. If you want to walk on water, you got to get off the boat, right? And I was like, it's by a Presbyterian pastor, right? Come to find out, it was a PCA pastor.
Oh, nothing against PCA, but if you know, you know.
The funny thing is, so during GA, which is our General Assembly for those that are not Presbyterian, so the Outlook was covering GA, and we were sharing this house, and so one of our contracted authors, I was telling him my quote unquote start to ministry story, and he was like, no, you still should say that because like the book did what it was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Maybe not for them. Because in PCA, like, women don't have voice, y'all. They're not preaching, they're not in leadership. It's very, very, very conservative. So, and I took that and was like, no, I want to walk on water. I can be like Peter.
Meanwhile, the other's like, wait a minute, not you.
Not you.
You get back in the boat.
Right, get back in the boat. Matter of fact, push it.
Is that racist? God.
I don't know. Cut it. I don't know. No, keep it on there. But yeah, so that's my story. And I just, I have found liberation, though, being Presbyterian in so many ways. Like, I felt like what'd you say?
I said, can you talk about that? Which you just went ahead and did anyway. So go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I just found it fascinating that I was in this denomination that I could ask questions and my questions wouldn't be rejected in my thought process, because I would ask so many pastors, right? Well, what does this mean? And every single Presbyterian pastor, I don't know if you've had this experience, but they always answer with the same answer. You want to know what it is?
Yeah.
What do you think it means? What? You're the one that went to seminary. Share your degree with me, one-on-one.
What do you think it means? That's true. All of our Presbyterian pastors who are listening are going to be like, oh yeah, I do say that.
One of them, and you know who they are because we are in the same circle. They all did that to me, Jesse. Every last one of them, including my own pastor. Like I was I was having this moment, and I was like, I was just reconciling like all my feelings. And I was like, is divorce a sin? Like, so I asked my pastor, and she never responded to me. I was like, oh my gosh, it must be sinful. And then like, I'm like, you never responded to my email. And she said, what email? I was like, I was asking you about if divorce was a sin. Because at the time I'm twice divorced, y'all. It ain't my fault. I just want to put that out there. Like, I get divorced because I'm trying to like have a body count or nothing. I'm just letting you know. So I was just like trying to reconcile all that. And she said, God didn't give me an answer yet. I'm like, what?
God didn't give you an answer.
She said God didn't tell her to answer my email. So she didn't answer.
It's been a couple years since Pastor Bernice answered you.
Hey, Jesse, it's been 12. I asked her that shit 12 years ago.
Pastor Parker Jones,
Can I get an answer now? But then I found this other scripture, and that was like, if your spouse wants to leave you, let him leave. And that's essentially what happened.
Mm-hmm.
That's a story for another show, but yeah, so. But thank you, former spouse, for bringing me into the PCUSA.
And now look at you. Would you have thought when all of this transpired and you came to the PCUSA, that you would be basically so ingrained in the PCUSA? I mean, you're the moderator of the ABU, you're the moderator of the YAB board. Like,
no, I did not. True story. True story. This is fact, not fiction. I came to church. I came to that church, PCUSA Presbyterian Church on the Hill of South Capitol in Washington, D.C., because one of their elders prayed for me when my daughter passed away. Mm-hmm. That was it. I was just trying to find Jesus. That was it. That was all. And so I look back on that whole trajectory and like, what God blows your mind each and every time. If you let God lead you, God will blow your mind each and every time, because I did not. And this is almost 14 years later.
Wow.
I did not expect any of this, any of it. And when I first got into leadership was during doing Transforming Congregations grant. I wrote a grant. Mm-hmm. I wrote the grant for my church to get the funds. Yeah. And then they just what they used the money for was to give me a small stipend to create new programming. So I did all these little fun things and all that. And then they had this like year in, like they brought all the churches together that got this funding to talk about how the year was spent and what happened, right? And at this point, I was so on fire for God. Like I was just excited. I was saying yes to everything. Yeah. And the topic was, they were talking about why millennials weren't coming to church. And at the time, they thought I was a millennial. Mm-hmm. They still think I'm a millennial. I'm headed to 50.
Black don't crack, Shawnee. Black don't crack.
So anyway, a gentleman stood up, an elder stood up and was talking about, we have to do something to get our young people back into the pews. Mm-hmm. And I said, and I thought I was being like really profound and exciting and young spirited. And I was like, so I was in my mid 30s at the time. And I was like, and all of my friend groups, we were on this like kind of different, kind of like similar journeys of trying to find our God of our youth in a way, because we had all grew up in church, but kind of spread out into different ways. And then, life happened and all that. But when you get to, you get in your mid-30s and you start to, your parents start to get sick or start to pass away, and you start to feel your mortality, and you like, okay, I got to get right with God, right? So we were kind of all in that space. And what I noticed about all of us is that I was the only one still in a mainline denominational church. All my other friends were going to non-denominational churches, very multicultural churches, if you will, or like hip church, like the pastor didn't wear a tie, wore jeans, right? They had worship bands. And I was still we were still singing hymns at my church. Yeah. Right. And so, and I guess, you go where you feel comfortable, which is fine. But what I had said, I spoke up and said, I don't tell people, I don't mention, it doesn't come up in conversation that I go to a Presbyterian church. I just go to Faith Church. I just called it church, right? And this gentleman, in all his rage, pointed his finger at me and said, "You are ignorant." Called me ignorant in front of 50 people.
Wow.
Now, the funny thing about this story is that's the first thought. That was my very first thought. I remember that memory when I got the call to ask to serve to be vice moderator. I was like, I'm ignorant, huh? That's my first thought. How you like me now? I went real old school. I was like, but I mean, that's, because, I gotta show off sometimes for the people. But what that taught, but I am so grateful that I had the wherewithal back then, even though I was kind of rediscovering my faith again, that I did not let that deter me. I came back, right?
Yeah.
I came back. Some people would have never come back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And one of the things that I promised myself that I would never, I would pray to God that I would never harm someone in a way that they were so on fire and I lit their fire out.
Yeah.
Extinguished. Thank you. To the point where they don't come back. I need people at the table. Even if they don't look like me, sound like me, talk like me, I need them at the table because we all have a gift.
Yeah. Would you say that it makes you feel so good inside?
Yes.
So good inside.
Yes.
Almost as if you were a natural woman.
Great callback, Jesse. I love us. Yes.
I was sitting here going, how can I do this? How can I pull it back?
That was really good. Okay, y'all, Jesse is the master of you. Your wordplay is good. Everything. You are just really good with words. Yes.
I try. I'm better on paper than I am out loud, but go ahead. Tell the people how it was.
I disagree because you remember things. I'll be like, how you remember that?
I have a very freakish brain.
I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. You can ask most people in my life that they'll just be like, hey, Jesse, do you know what this? You probably do, but do you remember this? Okay. Yeah.
And you do remember. I'd be like, Jesse, September 9th, 2022.
Where were you? What were you doing?
And Jesse will just tell you. Like, you remember stuff I said. Like, this is like, I don't even remember half the stuff I say 10 minutes after I say it. Jesse will be like, you remember because back at the retreat last year in March, Shawnee said, I'll be like, damn, I sounded so good.
I just did that to my pastor the other day. We were talking about hospitality. I was like, remember that sermon that you gave? I don't know. It was like probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Really?
I was like, you taught, what xenophobia versus xenophilia meant. And she just looked at me like, that sounds like something I would do, but I have no recollection of that whatsoever.
Do you do that?
I don't know. My brain
Well,
just holds useless trivia.
It's a gift. And I thank you for using your gift.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Also, Jesse, you know what else Jesse does? She creates the titles for these episodes. I cannot wait to figure out what the title is going to be.
I gotta go back and listen. Something good is gonna come out of it. I know it is.
So shout out to all of our sponsors and a few housekeeping things. We need you to subscribe to the podcast. Mm-hmm. So we're new to podcasting, and as soon as I think we probably have another week or two before it will be on Apple Podcasts. But once it's there, it'll be on a whole bunch of them. But for now, you can listen to us on Spotify. You can listen to us on Buzzsprout. Subscribe. You have to listen to at least 2 episodes, and then you can rate us. Please do so. If you want to be on the show, or if you have a topic that you want us to talk about, Embracing Race Podcast at gmail.com.
Yep, absolutely. Embracing Race Podcast at gmail.com.
Embracing Race Podcast at gmail.com. Follow us on social media. So we're on Instagram. Someone asked me yesterday, are we on Facebook? And I'm just like, why? Do we have to go on Facebook?
I don't. Well, I think it depends on the crowd that we're trying to reach. There are 2 different, I don't know. I'm not going to.
Well, I want to reach listeners, and I want to reach people that will give us a distribution deal. Because Jesse and I both need real jobs.
This is true.
I mean, I have a lot of jobs, but most of my stuff is in ministry and is volunteer.
Mm-hmm. Or it's contract, so it's contract to contract. Yeah.
Yes. So
not that there's anything wrong with that work, but there is something to be said for a consistent paycheck.
It is something to be said. Because have y'all seen how much milk and eggs are?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we are on Instagram, Embracing Race
Embracing
Podcast.
_ yeah, make sure you put the underscores in. Embracing _ Race _ Podcast.
Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to that.
Interact with us. Leave comments on our YouTube page. Leave comments on the Instagram. If we post something on Facebook, leave comments. We want to know what you think.
And sponsor. You can sponsor us. You can sponsor us in many different ways. And so if you go to embracingrace.online, there's more information on our sponsorship opportunities. And as always, thank you for listening.
Yes. Have a great day. See you next week.
See you next week.
The Embracing Race podcast, hosted by Elders Shawnee McElwain and Jesse Littlejohn, tackles all topics from pop culture to faith and the intersectionality of white supremacy and racism. Nothing is off limits, as we hope to educate and transform with radical love. For more information, visit us at embracingrace.online or on Instagram at embracing_race_podcast. If you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, or if you would like to submit a comment or question, please email embracingracepodcast@gmail.com. We are thankful for those who have sponsored the Embracing Race podcast. Shout out to the following groups and people. Gen Out. The Gen Out Youth Chorus. Gen Out is an outreach ensemble of the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington, D.C. Gen Out's mission is to give young LGBTQ+ and allied youth a voice to connect to the community. The ensemble is open to all singers between the ages of 13 and 18. Please visit www.gmcw.org for more information. Interwoven Congregations. Isn't it our hope that we would all come together as a society across the chasm of race and become the beloved community that Dr. King imagined? Interwoven Congregations' mission is to organize and support partnerships between faith communities with different racial compositions in order to foster racial justice and healing. For more information, please visit www.interwovencongregations.org. HOD Records. HOD Records is a talent and artist development company that specializes in artistry development and content creation. Serving the DMV and beyond, HOD creates a family-centered management style that promotes a collaborative spirit. Check out HOD Records on all social media platforms and visit hodrecords.media for more information. If you would like to be a sponsor of the Embracing Race podcast, please email embracingracepodcast@gmail.com.